I'm Allison, 27, a physical therapist whose life shattered in an instant. My brother Garrett and I were inseparable until Natasha entered his life. I never imagined his fiancée would leave me concussed and injured on concrete steps, or that my own brother would text, "Stay away from us." The betrayal cut deeper than my physical wounds. Before I share how one woman destroyed our family bond, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and join me through this painful journey that changed everything I thought I knew about family loyalty. Growing up in Portland, Garrett and I developed the kind of sibling relationship most people envied. Just 3 years apart, we navigated childhood together as a united front. Our parents divorced when I was 10 and Garrett 13, a traumatic period that could have driven us apart but instead cemented our bond. While our friends with divorced parents often found themselves torn between households, we made a pact to always stick together, creating stability within the chaos. Our mother Lisa gained primary custody, but we spent weekends with our father James. During those difficult transition years, Garrett became my protector. When kids at school whispered about our family situation, he would appear at my classroom door between periods, walking me to my next class with a reassuring wink that said everything would be okay. Those small gestures meant the world to me. As teenagers, we developed different interests. Garrett gravitated toward basketball and business clubs, while I discovered my passion for dance and science. Despite these differences, we remained each other's confidants. Our shared bathroom became the site of late-night conversations about school drama, first crushes, and deeper fears about the future. Garrett would sit on the edge of the bathtub while I perched on the closed toilet lid, talking until our mother knocked on the door telling us to go to bed. After high school, we attended different colleges but texted daily. Garrett pursued finance at Washington State, while I studied kinesiology at Oregon with plans to become a physical therapist. Even with the distance, we coordinated our breaks to maximize family time. During sophomore year, when my roommate situation imploded mid-semester, Garrett drove 4 hours to help me move my belongings to a new apartment, no questions asked. After graduation, fate brought us back to Portland. I secured a position at Northwest Rehabilitation Center, while Garrett landed an analyst role at a financial firm downtown. We lived just 15 minutes apart and established our sacred tradition. Sunday brunches at Maple Street Cafe, where we'd claim the corner booth by the window and spend hours catching up over blueberry pancakes and endless coffee refills. These brunches became our sanctuary. When Garrett went through his devastating breakup with Heather after 3 years together, I was the one who listened to him process his grief week after week. He had been certain she was the one, even looking at engagement rings before she confessed to having feelings for a coworker. For months, I watched my brother rebuild himself, Sunday by Sunday, from shattered to whole. Similarly, when my relationship with Kyle crumbled after 2 years, his medical residency taking him to Chicago with a too casual, long distance might be good for us, Garrett showed up at my apartment with ice cream and terrible action movies. He let me cry and rant, never once saying, "I told you so," despite his early reservations about Kyle's commitment level. "Promise me something," Garrett said during a particularly vulnerable brunch 6 months after my breakup. "We'll always be honest with each other, even when it hurts." I remember nodding firmly, clinking my coffee mug against his. Especially when it hurts. That's what siblings are for. That promise would be tested sooner than either of us realized. Last spring, Garrett mentioned he'd met someone. His casual tone couldn't mask the excitement in his eyes, a spark I hadn't seen since before the Heather catastrophe. Her name was Natasha, a marketing executive he'd met at a company mixer. Their first date stretched from drinks to dinner to a midnight walk along the waterfront. By the third date, they were inseparable. "There's something different about her, Ollie," he told me, using my childhood nickname that normally only emerged when he was feeling particularly affectionate or vulnerable. "She just gets me, you know? It's like we've known each other forever." I was thrilled for him, but surprised at the intensity after just 3 months. Garrett had always been cautious with his heart since the Heather situation. When he mentioned canceling our brunch to meet Natasha's parents who were visiting from Seattle, I felt a twinge of unease but quickly dismissed it. New relationships often created these temporary imbalances, I reasoned. The weeks flew by with Garrett's texts full of Natasha and I statements. Our brunches became more sporadic, with Natasha occasionally joining us. During these shared meals, I tried to connect with her, genuinely wanting to welcome the woman making my brother so happy. Then came the call that changed everything. On a random Tuesday evening, Garrett's name flashed on my phone. "Ollie, you'll never believe it." His voice bubbled with excitement. "I asked Natasha to marry me, and she said yes." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "Wow, that's huge news. Congratulations. I didn't even know you were thinking about proposing." I struggled to sound appropriately enthusiastic while processing the information. "When you know," he replied, seemingly oblivious to my hesitation. 5 months might seem fast to some people, but we're absolutely certain. 5 months. They'd known each other for less time than most people lease a car. I swallowed my concerns and promised to help with engagement celebrations, all while a knot formed in my stomach that wouldn't dissipate. The official engagement dinner took place at Riverside Grill, an upscale restaurant overlooking the Willamette River. Our parents flew in for the occasion, along with a small circle of friends. I arrived early to help with arrangements, determined to embrace this new chapter in Garrett's life despite my reservations. When Natasha entered the private dining room on Garrett's arm, I understood part of her allure. She was stunning, tall and poised with perfect chestnut hair that fell in soft waves past her shoulders. Her emerald dress complemented her hazel eyes, and the sizable diamond on her finger caught the light with every graceful gesture. More impressive was how she worked the room, remembering details about each guest from previous conversations with Garrett. "Allison," she exclaimed, embracing me with the perfect balance of warmth and restraint. "The famous sister I've heard so much about. Garrett says you're the best physical therapist in Portland." "He's biased," I laughed, returning her hug. "That it's wonderful to finally meet you properly." Our conversation flowed easily as she asked thoughtful questions about my work and shared amusing anecdotes about her marketing projects. Yet something felt rehearsed in her interactions, like she was performing rather than connecting. I dismissed this thought as my own protective instinct toward Garrett. The first red flag appeared during dinner. When Garrett began telling a story about our childhood camping disaster, Natasha placed her hand on his arm, interrupting with a gentle but firm, "Sweetheart, you're talking with your hands again. Remember what we discussed about professional dining etiquette?" The comment was delivered with a smile, but Garrett immediately adjusted his posture and continued, more subdued. My brother, who had always been expressively animated when storytelling, now sat with controlled movements, occasionally glancing at Natasha as if checking for approval. Later, when our father asked about wedding timeline plans, Natasha answered before Garrett could open his mouth. "We're thinking a short engagement. No point waiting when you've found your perfect match." She squeezed Garrett's hand possessively. "Plus, Garrett's company is restructuring next year, so we want to be settled before any changes." This was news to me. Garrett hadn't mentioned any job uncertainty during our increasingly rare catch-ups. As the evening progressed, I noticed how Natasha's subtly redirected conversations, especially when attention focused too long on Garrett or me. When our mother began reminiscing about our childhood theater performances, Natasha smoothly pivoted to discussing the restaurant's architecture, effectively cutting off the shared family memory. The next morning, I texted Garrett suggesting our traditional post-celebration brunch debrief. His response came hours later. "Can't today. Natasha and I are looking at potential venues." This pattern continued over the following weeks. Our Sunday brunches were repeatedly canceled or rescheduled, often at the last minute. Natasha's not feeling well, or Natasha surprised me with brunch at the new place downtown, or simply something came up with the wedding planning. When we did manage to meet, Natasha frequently joined us, transforming our sibling sanctuary into wedding central. The one time I suggested a quick coffee, just the two of us, Garrett looked uncomfortable and said, "Natasha and I are trying to do everything together during this special time." During a workout session with our mutual friend Tara, I cautiously mentioned my concerns. "I've noticed some changes too," Tara admitted, lowering her voice despite the empty gym corner. Last week at Philip's birthday, Natasha kept speaking for Garrett. When he mentioned her family's cabin trip planned for summer, she immediately said they couldn't possibly attend with all the commitments they have as a couple now. Tara hesitated before continuing. "There's something else. Natasha told Julia that you've been unsupportive of their relationship from the beginning. She said you made some comment about her being a rebound relationship that was moving too fast." "What?" I nearly dropped my water bottle. "I've never said anything like that to anyone, let alone her." Tara looked uncomfortable. "I figured as much. Just thought you should know what's being said." The situation deteriorated further when I arrived early to help Garrett set up for a small dinner party at his apartment. I overheard Natasha in the bedroom, her voice sharp and unfamiliar. "I can't believe you didn't confirm the dinner reservation. Do I have to manage everything? Sometimes I wonder if you're ready for marriage at all." Garrett's response was apologetic and meek, nothing like his usual confident tone. When they emerged moments later, Natasha was all smiles, complimenting my outfit while Garrett checked his phone repeatedly before speaking, as if mentally reviewing his words. Other changes became apparent too. Garrett, who had always been spontaneous and sociable, now required advance notice for any get-together. His responses to group messages came hours later, often with identical phrasing to Natasha's replies. He stopped attending our friend Kevin's monthly poker nights, explaining that Natasha feels we should prioritize couples' activities. Despite mounting evidence, I tried giving Natasha the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps the stress of wedding planning was bringing out unusual behavior. Maybe I was being overly protective, seeing problems where there were only normal relationship adjustments. Then came the bombshell. During a rare quick lunch near my clinic, Garrett announced they had set a wedding date just 3 months away. "That's incredibly soon," I said carefully. "I thought you might wait until next year at least." Natasha found the perfect venue with a cancellation. "Everything's falling into place." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "She's amazing at organizing all this." I took a deep breath. "Garrett, are you sure this timeline feels right to you?" "It seems like everything is moving at warp speed." His expression hardened slightly. "What are you suggesting?" "Nothing bad, just, I want to make sure you're making these decisions together, not getting swept along. Natasha and I are partners. We make all decisions together." His tone left no room for discussion. As we parted ways, I made a decision. It was time for the heart-to-heart conversation we'd been avoiding. I spent days planning the conversation, rehearsing words that would express concern without sounding judgmental. Finally, I texted Garrett asking to meet at Riverfront Coffee, a quiet spot where we'd had serious conversations before. He agreed, suggesting a Wednesday afternoon when Natasha had a hair appointment. The fact that he specified why Natasha wouldn't be there struck me as odd but confirmed my suspicions that alone time with my brother had become something to be scheduled around his fiancée's approval. I arrived 15 minutes early, securing our favorite corner table and ordering Garrett's usual, an Americano with room for cream. As I waited, nervousness built in my chest. Was I overstepping? Was I seeing problems that weren't there? 20 minutes after our agreed time, Garrett finally rushed in, looking harried. "Sorry I'm late," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Natasha needed me to drop off some wedding samples at the planner's office." "No problem." I pushed his coffee toward him. "Still hot." "Thanks." He took a sip, then immediately checked his phone, placing it face up on the table. The screen lit up every few minutes with notifications that drew his eyes downward. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just busy. Natasha's sending updates about the wedding invitations." He put the phone down with visible effort. "So, what's up? You said you wanted to talk about something important." I took a deep breath. "I wanted to check in about you, actually. We haven't had much one-on-one time lately, and I've noticed some changes." His posture immediately stiffened. "What kind of changes?" "You seem different since getting engaged. Less available, more stressed." "I barely see without Natasha anymore." "That's what happens when you're planning a wedding and building a life together," he replied defensively. "Priorities shift. I understand that, but it's more than just being busy." I leaned forward, keeping my voice gentle. "You check your phone constantly, like you're afraid of missing a message from her. You've canceled plans with friends you've had for years. Even the way you tell stories has changed." "That's ridiculous," he scoffed, but his eyes darted to his phone again. "Is it? Remember when Natasha corrected your hand-talking at the engagement dinner? You've always talked with your hands. It's part of who you are. Now you sit still when she's around." His jaw tightened. "She's helping me be more professional. What's wrong with that?" "Nothing, if that's what you want. But these changes seem to be happening because Natasha wants them, not because you do." "You don't know what I want," he snapped, then immediately softened. "Look, relationships require compromise. Natasha has high standards. It's why she's so successful." I decided to be more direct. "Garrett, some of the things I've observed go beyond compromise. The way she speaks to you, when she thinks no one is listening, how she's isolated you from friends and family, the lies she's told about me to other people." "What lies?" His expression darkened. I told him about the conversation with Tara, about Natasha claiming I'd called their relationship a rebound. He was quiet for a moment. "She probably misunderstood something you said." "I never said anything remotely like that. To anyone." His phone buzzed again, and he glanced at it reflexively. 3 messages from Natasha, in quick succession. "She gets anxious when I'm not responsive," he explained, typing a quick reply. "She had a previous relationship where the guy cheated. It left some trust issues. And that explains why you need to report your whereabouts constantly? Garrett, that's not healthy. Trust issues need to be worked on, not catered to at the expense of your autonomy." His expression hardened. "You don't understand our relationship. I understand that my brother, who has always been confident and independent, now seems to need permission to spend time with his own sister." "That's unfair," he said, voice rising. "You're painting Natasha as some kind of controlling monster, because what? You're jealous and not at your beck and call anymore?" The accusation stung. "This isn't about me. It's about patterns I'm seeing that concern me. The speed of this relationship, the isolation from friends and family, the personality changes. Enough." Garrett stood abruptly, drawing glances from nearby tables. "I thought you'd be happy for me, but instead you're trying to sabotage the best thing that's ever happened to me. Maybe Natasha was right about your jealousy." "Garrett, please, no. I'm done with this conversation. I love Natasha, and we're getting married in 3 months. Either accept my choices or—" He didn't finish the sentence, grabbing his jacket instead. "Or what?" I asked quietly. He paused, conflict visible on his face. "Just accept my choices, Allison. Please." With that, he walked out, leaving his barely touched coffee behind. I sat in stunned silence, tears threatening. Had I pushed too hard? Said too much? The siblings who had promised honesty, especially when it hurts, were now divided by exactly that honesty. The following day, I called my therapist Diane for an emergency session. For 2 years, she had helped me work through the aftermath of my breakup with Kyle and various family dynamics. Now I desperately needed her perspective. "You're questioning yourself because Garrett reacted defensively," Diane observed after I recounted the coffee shop confrontation. "That's natural, but it doesn't mean your concerns are invalid." What if I am jealous? What if I'm seeing problems that aren't there because I miss how things used to be? Diane considered this. It's possible you're experiencing some adjustment difficulty with this new dynamic. However, the behaviors you've described, the isolation, the personality changes, the monitoring of his communications, these align with potentially controlling relationship patterns. So what do? I've tried talking to him, and it backfired spectacularly. Unfortunately, confronting someone about a controlling relationship often drives them further into isolation. The controlling partner can use that confrontation as evidence that others are trying to come between them. She advised giving Garrett space while making it clear I remained available. Don't disappear completely, that reinforces the isolation. But respect his boundaries for now. Sometimes people need to recognize these patterns themselves. Her words made sense, but implementing them proved agonizing. A week passed with no contact from Garrett, the longest we'd gone without speaking since he'd studied abroad in college. I crafted and deleted dozens of messages, unsure how to repair the damage without compromising my concerns. Finally, on day 8, my phone chimed with a text from Garrett. Sorry about last week. Been thinking about what you said. Maybe some valid points, but delivery was hurtful. Natasha and I are working on better communication. Could use your help with wedding stuff if you're still willing. Miss you. Relief washed over me, followed quickly by uncertainty. The message seemed like Garrett, yet something felt off. The formal phrasing, the neat packaging of the issue. Still, it was an olive branch I couldn't ignore. I replied, I miss you too. Sorry if my approach was wrong. Would love to help with wedding preparations. 2 days later, we met for a brief lunch. The conversation remained surface level, with Garrett avoiding any mention of our previous discussion. He asked if I could help assemble wedding favors the following weekend, and I agreed, hoping the activity might provide opportunity for more meaningful conversation. As I drove home, a nagging feeling persisted. Something about Garrett's too easy forgiveness didn't sit right. When a notification popped up on my phone from a local news app, I nearly ignored it until a familiar name caught my eye. Brandon Winters, arrested for violation of restraining order. The name Brandon Winters triggered a memory. Natasha had mentioned an ex named Brandon during the engagement dinner, describing him as psychotically obsessed with her after their breakup. According to her story, he had fabricated lies about her to mutual friends when she ended things. With a growing sense of unease, I decided to do something I'd never considered before: research Natasha's background. Little did I know this decision would set in motion events that would change everything. Fate has strange ways of intervening when we need it most. The very next morning after seeing that news alert about Brandon Winters, I stopped at Daybreak Cafe near my apartment for a quick breakfast before work. While waiting for my order, I noticed a woman staring at me from across the room. She approached hesitantly. Excuse me, are you Allison Parker? Garrett's sister? Surprised, I nodded. Yes. Do we know each other? I'm Jennifer Walsh. I recognize you from pictures on Garrett's Instagram. She glanced around nervously. I used to be Natasha's roommate. Could we talk for a minute? My heart raced as we settled at a corner table, coffee cups creating a small barrier between us. Jennifer twisted a napkin in her hands, clearly uncomfortable. I've been debating whether to reach out to you for weeks, she began. When I saw Garrett's engagement announcement online, I felt sick to my stomach. The same thing happened with Brandon. Brandon Winters? I asked, the coincidence sending chills down my spine. Jennifer's eyes widened. You know about Brandon? Only what Natasha has mentioned, that he was obsessive after their breakup. A bitter laugh escaped her. That's her version. The reality is completely different. Over the next hour, Jennifer painted a disturbing picture of my brother's fiancée. According to her, Natasha had a pattern of targeting successful, kind-hearted men, moving relationships at lightning speed, and systematically isolating them from friends and family. Brandon wasn't an obsessive ex, but rather her previous victim who had eventually discovered her lies and confronted her. She creates these elaborate stories about her past, jobs she never had, family wealth that doesn't exist, even fake health scares to gain sympathy and control, Jennifer explained. When Brandon found evidence of her credit card fraud using his personal information, she turned everything around, claiming he was abusive and threatening. The restraining order, I murmured, pieces clicking into place, was filed by her as a preemptive strike when he threatened to go to the police about the fraud. She's masterful at appearing to be the victim. Jennifer pulled out her phone, showing me text messages from Brandon dating back months, documenting his concerns about Natasha's behavior. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Because the pattern is clear. First comes the whirlwind romance, then the quick engagement, then complete isolation from support systems. Jennifer's expression softened with sympathy. "I've seen what she's capable of, and I couldn't live with myself if I stayed silent while another family was torn apart." We exchanged contact information, and Jennifer promised to connect me with Brandon once he resolved his legal situation. As I headed to work, my mind raced with this new information, simultaneously validated in my concerns, yet terrified for my brother. That evening, I began my investigation. Jennifer had provided enough specific details to verify companies where Natasha claimed to have worked, credentials she supposedly held, charity boards she purportedly served on. One by one, these claims unraveled under scrutiny. The marketing firm in Seattle where she claimed to have been a director had no record of her employment. The MBA from Northwestern she prominently displayed on her LinkedIn profile couldn't be verified through the alumni directory. The childhood home in Bellevue's exclusive neighborhood belonged to a family with a different surname. Most disturbing was what I found in public records. Natasha had a history of small claims court cases from previous landlords and credit card companies. There was also a sealed case that, based on the court division, likely involved fraud. With shaking hands, I compiled everything into a folder on my laptop, unsure how to proceed. The next day, I reached out to our parents, asking to meet without sharing specific details over the phone. They arrived at my apartment that weekend, concern evident in their expressions as I laid out what I discovered. "This is serious, Allison," my father said gravely. "If even half of this is accurate, Garrett could be heading for significant emotional and financial damage." My mother, always the more cautious one, urged restraint. "We need absolute certainty before approaching Garrett. He's already defensive about the relationship. Accusing Natasha without rock-solid proof could backfire terribly." "I agree," I said. "That's why I'm waiting to speak with Brandon directly and gather more documentation. But I'm scared for Garrett. The wedding is only 2 months away now." We agreed that I would continue gathering information while my parents subtly tried to spend more time with Garrett, looking for opportunities to express concern without directly attacking Natasha. 3 days later, Brandon's friend Lucas contacted me, sharing court documents that confirmed Jennifer's account. Natasha had obtained a temporary restraining order against Brandon just days after he discovered unauthorized credit accounts opened in his name. The case was dismissed when she failed to appear at the hearing, but by then, she had already moved on, presumably to find her next target. Lucas also shared screenshots of group texts showing how Natasha had systematically turned their social circle against Brandon with fabricated stories of emotional abuse, much as she was now doing with me among Garrett's friends. I was organizing these new documents, preparing how to present everything to Garrett, when my doorbell rang unexpectedly. Through the peephole, I saw Natasha standing alone in the hallway, a pleasant smile on her face. My pulse quickened. Should I pretend to be out? No, my car was visibly parked outside. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. "Natasha, this is a surprise." "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, her tone friendly. "I was shopping nearby, and thought I'd drop off the bridesmaid dress swatches in person rather than mailing them." Reluctantly, I invited her in, quickly closing my laptop where the evidence files were open. She glanced at the computer before handing me an envelope of fabric samples. "These should complement your coloring beautifully," she said, settling onto my couch uninvited. "Garrett mentioned you have excellent taste. We value your inputs so much." The conversation remained superficially pleasant as she discussed wedding details, yet tension hung in the air. Finally, after nearly 20 minutes of meaningless chatter, her demeanor shifted subtly. "You know, Allison, I've noticed some distance between us despite my efforts to include you in our happiness." Her voice remained soft, but her eyes hardened. "Garrett has been so hurt by your reluctance to fully embrace our relationship. I want nothing but happiness for Garrett," I replied carefully. "Do you?" She smiled, the expression not reaching her eyes. "Then why have you been contacting people from my past? Why meet with Jennifer Walsh, a known liar who is evicted for stealing from me?" My blood ran cold. She'd been monitoring me somehow, perhaps through mutual acquaintances or social media location tags. "Jennifer approached me, actually," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. She seemed concerned. "Of course she did." Natasha laughed lightly. "Jennifer has had a vendetta against me since I reported her theft. And poor Brandon, did they tell you about his history of instability? The restraining order wasn't my first choice, but necessary for my safety." She stood, walking slowly around my living room, examining photos on the wall. "Family is so precious, isn't it? Garrett talks constantly about your special bond." She paused at a picture of Garrett and me from last Christmas. "It would devastate him to lose that." The threat hung in the air between us. "I'm not sure what you're implying," I said. She turned, dropping all pretense of warmth. "Stop digging into my past. Stop poisoning Garrett with your concerns. The wedding is happening, and you can either be part of our life or not. Your choice." She collected her purse, moving toward the door. "I haven't shown Garrett the text from Jennifer yet. Yes, she unwisely contacted him too. I protected him from that pain because I love him. But if this continues, I won't have a choice." As she reached the door, she turned back, her mask of pleasantness firmly back in place. "I do hope you find the swatch colors suitable. We so want you standing beside us on our special day." The door closed behind her, leaving me shaking with a mixture of fear and determination. Her visit confirmed everything Jennifer and Brandon had said, and made clear the threat Natasha posed not just to Garrett's well-being but potentially to my relationship with him forever. With newfound resolve, I decided to present all my findings to Garrett immediately, regardless of the consequences. Some risks were worth taking to protect those you love. The following morning, I texted Garrett asking to meet at Lincoln Park, our childhood refuge, where we'd spent countless hours climbing trees and playing make-believe. This neutral territory felt safer than either of our apartments, providing both privacy and the comfort of familiar surroundings. "Need to talk to you about something important. Can we meet at our old spot by the duck pond in Lincoln Park? Tomorrow at 4? I wrote. His response came hours later. "Okay. Everything all right?" I replied simply, "Just need to talk brother to sister. No emergency." That night, I carefully organized all the evidence I'd gathered, printed copies of court records, screenshots of communications, notes from conversations with Jennifer and Brandon's friend Lucas. I placed everything in a folder, including a heartfelt letter explaining my concerns came from love, not interference. The next day, anxiety churned in my stomach as I arrived at the park 30 minutes early. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the walking paths as I found a bench near the pond, rehearsing opening lines in my head. How do you tell your brother that the woman he loves is systematically destroying his life? Lost in thought, I didn't notice someone approaching until a shadow fell across the path. Looking up expectantly, my heart sank when I saw Natasha standing there alone, arms crossed. "Where's Garrett?" I asked, instantly on guard. "Running late," she replied coolly. He asked me to come ahead and let you know. The lie was obvious. Garrett would have simply texted me himself. I don't believe you. Her pleasant facade dissolved instantly. It doesn't matter what you believe. I know why you wanted to meet him here. I saw the files you've been collecting. She stepped closer, voice dropping. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? How Garrett responds to factual information about your past is his choice, I said, standing to avoid being physically towered over. But he deserves to know the truth before marrying you. The truth? She laughed harshly. You mean the lies you've assembled from bitter ex-roommates and unstable former boyfriends? You think Garrett will choose those stories over the woman he loves? They're not stories. They're documented facts, court records, employment verifications, credit histories. Her eyes narrowed dangerously. You're pathetic, you know that? So desperate to keep your brother all to yourself that you'd fabricate this elaborate smear campaign. I'm trying to protect him. From what? Being happy? Moving forward with his life. Not being at your beck and call anymore? She moved closer, invading my personal space. He told me how clingy you've always been, how you've sabotaged his previous relationships. That's why he asked me to handle this. He doesn't even want to see you anymore. The lie was so outrageous it momentarily stunned me. Garrett would never say such things. That's not true, I said firmly. Garrett and I have always been close. We've supported each other through everything. Until now, she sneered. Because he finally sees how toxic your dependency is. Why do you think he's been avoiding you? Why do you think he chose me? I took a deep breath, refusing to be baited. I'm meeting Garrett here. This conversation is between him and me. He's not coming, she snapped, her composure cracking. I saw your text. I know what you're planning. It ends now. You're reading his messages? Do you realize how controlling that is? It's called protecting our relationship from poisonous influences like you. Her voice rose as her face contorted with rage. I will not let you ruin everything I've worked for. What you've worked for? Don't you mean what you and Garrett have built together? I challenged, suddenly seeing her mask fall completely. You have no idea what it takes to secure a future. Garrett has everything: family connections, career potential, financial stability. Things I've fought for my entire life. In that moment, I saw Natasha clearly, not as the loving fiancée, but as someone who viewed my brother as an acquisition, a means to the life she wanted. Garrett isn't a meal ticket, I said quietly. He's a person who deserves someone who loves him for who he is, not what he can provide. Something dangerous flashed to her eyes. You self-righteous bitch. You think you can just destroy everything with your little file of evidence? She gestured to my bag, where the folder was partially visible. I think Garrett deserves the truth, however painful. And I think you need to learn when to back off. She suddenly lunged forward, grabbing for my bag. I instinctively pulled back, stepping away. Stop it. This is insane. Give me that folder. She grabbed my arm roughly, trying to wrestle the bag away. Let go of me. I tried breaking free, but her grip tightened painfully. You've been a problem from day one, she hissed, her nails digging into my skin. Always watching, always judging, always trying to come between us. The struggle intensified as I tried protecting the evidence while freeing myself from her grip. We moved backward during the tussle, approaching the concrete steps that led down to the lower pond area. Natasha, stop. You're hurting me, I shouted, hoping someone nearby would hear. You brought this on yourself. With a powerful shove, she pushed me backward. Time seemed to slow as I lost my balance at the edge of the steps. My arms windmilled frantically, the bag slipping from my grasp as I tried to regain balance. Then gravity took over. The fall seemed both instantaneous and eternal. My body tumbled down the concrete steps, pain exploding through my shoulder as it struck the edge of a step. My head followed, connecting with solid concrete with a sickening crack. The world spun in a kaleidoscope of pain and disorientation as I finally came to rest at the bottom, partially on my side. Through blurred vision, I saw Natasha calmly descending the steps, my bag in her hand. She knelt beside me, her voice eerily calm. "Look what you made me do," she said, almost sadly. "This could have been avoided if you'd just minded your own business." I tried to speak, but only a groan emerged. Pain radiated from my shoulder and head, and a warm wetness that I vaguely recognized as blood trickled down my temple. "If you pursue this further," she continued, rifling through my bag and extracting the folder, "next time will be worse. Stay away from Garrett. Stay away from our wedding. Stay away from our life." She stood, looking down at me with cold detachment. "You fell down the stairs. Accidents happen all the time." Through the fog of pain and growing disorientation, a new voice suddenly called out, "Hey, what's going on over there?" A woman in running clothes appeared at the top of the steps. "Is someone hurt?" Natasha's demeanor instantly transformed, panic and concern washing over her face. "Oh my God. My future sister-in-law fell down these dangerous steps. Please help." The woman, Beth, I would later learn, rushed down while Natasha used the distraction to slip the evidence folder into her large purse. "I'll call an ambulance," Beth said, already pulling out her phone. "Thank you," Natasha replied with convincing distress. She leaned close to my ear one last time, whispering, "Remember what I said," before telling Beth, "I need to call her brother right away. This is terrible." As Natasha walked away, phone to her ear, in a performance of concerned calls, Beth knelt beside me, her kind face swimming in my increasingly blurry vision. "Stay with me," she urged, gently supporting my head. "Help is coming. Don't try to move." The pain was becoming more distant as shock set in. I tried to speak, to warn this good Samaritan about the woman walking away, but words wouldn't form properly. Sirens wailed in the distance as darkness crept into the edges of my vision. My last coherent thought before losing consciousness was of Garrett. How would he ever learn the truth now? The hospital room came into focus slowly. Beeping machines, antiseptic smell, the subtle ache of N4 in my arm. A doctor explained I had suffered a concussion and dislocated shoulder from the fall. 6 stitches closed a gash on my temple that would likely leave a scar. The police came to take my statement, their faces serious as I recounted the assault. Yes, I was certain it was deliberate. No, there hadn't been an argument that escalated accidentally. Yes, I wanted to press charges. Throughout it all, I kept trying to reach Garrett. Calls went straight to voicemail. Texts remained unread. My parents arrived, having been contacted by the hospital, their faces drawn with worry and anger. Then, finally, my phone chimed with Garrett's distinctive tone. My heart leapt as I opened his message, hope blooming that he'd come check on me, that Natasha's hold wasn't yet complete. Instead, I read words that shattered me more thoroughly than the concrete steps had broken my body. "I know what happened. Natasha told me everything. How could you physically attack her out of jealousy? She's pregnant, Allison. Pregnant. She could have lost our baby, because of you. Stay away from us. You've gone too far." The phone slipped from my fingers as a sob tore from my throat. The final piece of Natasha's plan clicked into place. She had completely reversed the situation, making herself the victim and me the aggressor. And she'd added a pregnancy claim I was certain was fabricated, knowing it would be the ultimate barrier between Garrett and the truth. In that sterile hospital room, surrounded by the physical evidence of her assault, I faced the devastating reality that I had lost my brother completely. The days following my hospitalization blurred together in a haze of pain medication, police interviews, and devastating silence from Garrett. My parents shuttled between the hospital and their hotel, their faces etched with the strain of being caught between their children. They had tried calling Garrett multiple times, only to be met with brief, defensive conversations where he reiterated Natasha's version of events. "He truly believes you attacked her," my mother said tearfully after one such call. "He says Natasha has bruises on her arms where you grabbed her." Self-inflicted, I thought bitterly, though I kept this to myself. The physical pain of my injuries paled compared to the emotional agony of having my character so thoroughly assassinated to the person who knew me best. 3 days after the assault, I was discharged with my right arm in a sling, instructions for concussion recovery, and a follow-up appointment with a neurologist. My friend Tara arrived to drive me home, her apartment temporarily becoming mine since I couldn't navigate the stairs to my third-floor unit alone. "I've arranged time off work," she said, helping me settle onto her guest bed. "Whatever you need, I'm here." What I needed was my brother back, but I couldn't articulate this without breaking down completely. The police investigation proceeded slowly. Detective Lawson, a soft-spoken woman with keen eyes, returned several times with follow-up questions. She seemed to believe my account but explained the challenges of prosecution. "Without witnesses to the actual push, it becomes your word against hers," she explained during one visit. "We're canvassing for any security cameras that might have had a view of that section of the park." My physical recovery proved easier than expected yet frustratingly slow. As a physical therapist, I understood the protocols for shoulder rehabilitation intimately. Now experiencing them from the patient's perspective revealed new empathy for my clients. My concussion symptoms gradually improved, though concentration remained difficult and headaches frequent. My professional life suffered as well. I had to take an extended leave from the rehabilitation center, my caseload distributed among colleagues. The financial strain added another layer of stress to an already overwhelming situation. 2 weeks after the assault, I sank into a depression that worried everyone around me. I withdrew from social activities, barely ate, and slept either too much or not at all. The betrayal cuts so deep that basic functioning seemed insurmountable some days. My parents eventually returned to their home in Arizona, but called daily. During one such call, my father's voice carried an unfamiliar hesitation. "Allison, sweetheart, we're considering reaching out to Garrett one more time more forcefully. Your mother and I have been talking. This isn't like him." The son we raised wouldn't abandon his sister after she was injured, regardless of the circumstances. "Don't," I said quickly. "It will only push him further away. Natasha will use it as evidence that we're all against them." The unspoken reality hung between us. Our family had fractured in ways we never imagined possible. While my external life contracted, Natasha expanded her campaign against me. Through mutual friends, I learned she had told elaborate stories about my jealous breakdown and unprovoked attack on her. According to her narrative, I had been increasingly unstable, resentful of her relationship with Garrett, and ultimately violent when confronted about my behavior. What hurt most was hearing that she claimed Garrett had been covering for my mental health issues for years. The sister he had trusted and loved was now being rewritten as unstable and dangerous. I stopped checking social media after seeing congratulatory comments on their wedding announcement page alongside thinly veiled references to overcoming family drama and standing strong against toxic influences. Nearly a month after the assault, an unexpected breakthrough occurred. Detective Lawson arrived at Tara's apartment with cautious optimism. "We found something," she said, setting up her laptop on the coffee table. "A security camera from the bookstore across from the park. The angle isn't ideal, but..." She played the footage, grainy and distant but clear enough. 2 figures by the pond, recognizably Natasha and me. The physical altercation, though partially obscured by trees, was visible. Most importantly, it clearly showed Natasha pushing me toward the steps, not the other way around. "This contradicts her statement entirely," Detective Lawson said. "We'll be bringing her in for questioning again." Relief flooded through me. "Will you arrest her?" "We're building the case. This is significant evidence," but we're still working on it. In the meantime, she handed me a business card. Someone reached out to the department asking to contact you. Beth Williams, the woman who found you after the fall. She's completed her witness statement and wanted to check on you. Beth called that evening. She had been troubled by what she'd seen, explaining that Natasha's behavior had seemed off even before Beth recognized the situation as an emergency. She was just standing there staring down at you for a moment, Beth recalled. Not panicking, not immediately helping. It didn't register as strange until later, when I had time to think about it. Her observations added another piece to the case building against Natasha. As my physical strength returned, my therapist Dr. Diane helped me rebuild my emotional resilience as well. During one particularly powerful session, she asked what was holding me back from healing. I feel like I failed, I admitted. Failed to protect Garrett. Failed to make him see the truth. You did everything possible to protect someone you love, she countered. The outcome doesn't diminish the courage of your actions. She encouraged me to redirect my energy from grief to advocacy, both for myself and for others who might face similar situations. Abusers isolate their victims from support systems. It's textbook. By fighting to reveal the truth, you're still standing in that support role, even if Garrett doesn't recognize it yet. Her words sparked something within me. If I gave up now, Natasha won completely. If I continued fighting for the truth, there remained hope that Garrett might eventually see through her manipulation. 5 weeks after the assault, I returned to my apartment and work schedule with renewed determination. I gathered every piece of evidence I still had access to: my medical records, police reports, the security footage Detective Lawson had provided, testimonials from Jennifer and Brandon about Natasha's pattern of behavior. With Tara's help, I compiled everything into a comprehensive digital file, including a timeline of events and Natasha's escalating behavior. The process was exhausting but empowering, transforming my pain into purpose. On a Sunday morning that would have typically been our brunch day, I sent the entire file to Garrett with a simple message: I love you too much to stay silent. No matter what you believe about me now, please just review this evidence. After that, if you still want me out of your life, I'll respect your decision. But you deserve to know who you're really marrying. Ollie. Days passed without response. The wedding was now just 2 weeks away. I oscillated between hope and despair, checking my phone constantly despite knowing the familiar notification sound would wake me if he replied. Then came a knock at my door, on a rainy Thursday evening. Not a text, not a call, a physical presence outside my apartment. Heart pounding, I approached cautiously and looked through the peephole. Garrett stood in the hallway, soaking wet from the rain, looking like he hadn't slept in days. I froze, hand on the doorknob, a storm of emotions paralyzing me momentarily. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. Garrett stood there, rain dripping from his hair, eyes red-rimmed and hollow. For a long moment, we simply stared at each other, 3 months of pain and separation suspended between us. Ollie, he finally whispered, my childhood nickname breaking something loose inside both of us. I stepped aside wordlessly, allowing him into my apartment. He moved past me hesitantly, like someone entering sacred ground they no longer felt worthy to tread upon. In my living room, he turned to face me, taking in my healing injuries, the fading bruise at my temple, the arm no longer in a sling but still held carefully. Something crumpled in his expression. I saw the video, he said, voice raw. The security footage from the bookstore. The police showed me yesterday when they came to question Natasha again. I remained silent, sensing he needed to speak without interruption. I didn't believe it at first. Couldn't believe it. But then I watched it 3 times. There was no mistaking what happened. His voice broke. She pushed you down those stairs. She could have killed you. And I accused you of attacking her. Tears welled in his eyes. After they left, I finally opened your email. Read everything. Looked at all the evidence. It was all there, everything you tried to tell me. The fraud, the lies, the manipulation. God, Ollie, what have I done? The dam broke then, and he collapsed onto my couch, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Despite everything, my instinct was to comfort him. I sat beside him, placing a gentle hand on his back. I'm so sorry, he managed between ragged breaths. I don't even know how to begin to apologize for not believing you. For that text I sent from the hospital. For everything. What happened after you saw the evidence? I asked quietly. He wiped his eyes, struggling to compose himself. I confronted her, showed her the video, told her I knew everything. She changed, right before my eyes. The Natasha I thought I knew just disappeared, and this cold, calculating person emerged. He described how she had initially tried to explain away the video, claiming it didn't show the full context. When that failed, she switched tactics, crying and claiming temporary insanity due to pregnancy hormones. When I pressed her about the pregnancy, said we should go to the doctor together immediately, she became enraged. Started throwing things, screaming that I was ungrateful for everything she'd done for me, how she could have had anyone but settled for me. Garrett explained how Natasha had systematically isolated him over the months, checking his phone regularly under the guise of planning surprises, discouraging contact with friends by claiming they'd made inappropriate comments about her, and consistently painting my concerns as jealousy and instability. She would tell me things you supposedly said about us, about her. Small comments at first that seemed plausible, then increasingly worse things. When I would confront you, you'd seem confused because you never actually said those things. He shook his head in disbelief at his own blindness. She had me text her during our conversations, so she knew exactly what we discussed. If I didn't respond quickly enough, there would be consequences: cold silence, accusations, tears. The control had extended to every aspect of his life: his clothing choices, his speech patterns, his career decisions. She had even convinced him to update his will and life insurance to name her as beneficiary, all under the guise of responsible planning for their future. Looking back, I can see how calculated it all was. She isolated me so gradually that I didn't notice until I was completely cut off from everyone who would have recognized what was happening. The police had taken Natasha in for further questioning after our confrontation. During their investigation, they discovered she was already wanted in Seattle for fraud charges. She had fled months earlier. Her real name wasn't even Natasha Collins but Natalie Chambers. She had been using a slightly altered identity. They arrested her last night, Garrett said, exhaustion evident in every line of his face. Multiple charges: assault, fraud, outstanding warrants. The detective said given her injuries and the video evidence, she's facing serious time. Relief washed over me, followed quickly by concern for my brother. Garrett, this isn't your fault. Manipulators like her are experts at what they do. But I should have trusted you, he insisted, anguish in his voice. You tried to warn me, and I chose her over my own sister. Over the person who's had my back my entire life. He looked down at his hands. I'll understand if you can't forgive me. I already have, I said simply, realizing as the words left my mouth that they were true. The anger and hurt remained, but underneath was the unshakable foundation of our relationship, the bond that had withstood divorce, distance, and heartbreaks. He looked up in disbelief. How? After what I said to you, how I treated you? Because you're my brother. Because I know the real you, and that person was temporarily lost, not gone forever. I took his hand. And because I would have done the same for you if our positions were reversed. That night marked the beginning of our healing journey, both individual and shared. Garrett moved in with me temporarily, both of us finding comfort in rebuilding our connection. He attended his first therapy session 3 days later, beginning the difficult process of understanding how he had been manipulated and working through the shame and guilt that threatened to overwhelm him. My physical recovery continued steadily. Within 6 months, my shoulder had regained most of its mobility, though certain movements would always carry a twinge of remembrance. The small scar at my temple faded but remained visible, a reminder not of victimhood but of survival. Natasha, or rather Natalie, accepted a plea deal to avoid a lengthy trial. She would serve 4 years for the assault and fraud charges combined, with additional restitution payments to various victims of her schemes, including Brandon. As summer turned to fall, our Sunday brunch tradition gradually resumed, initially awkward with unspoken pain, eventually warming into something both familiar and new. We were different people now, shaped by trauma, but also by the difficult wisdom it had yielded. Garrett found unexpected purpose in his experience, connecting with a support group for men who had experienced manipulative relationships. "Most guys don't talk about this stuff," he told me one evening. "There's so much shame involved, like you should have been man enough to recognize what was happening." Sharing my story helps others realize they're not alone. I too found meaning through volunteer work with a domestic violence organization, helping others recognize the warning signs of controlling relationships. My professional background as a physical therapist proved valuable in understanding the physical manifestations of psychological trauma. During one particularly meaningful brunch about 8 months after the assault, Garrett raised his coffee mug in a small toast. "To trusting your instincts," he said, a reference to our ongoing conversations about recognizing red flags. I clinked my cup against his. "And to having people in your life who tell you the truth, especially when it hurts." He nodded solemnly. "I'll never ignore those warning signs again. And I'll never take our relationship for granted." The road to complete healing stretched far ahead for both of us. Garrett still struggled with trusting his judgment in relationships, though he had recently begun cautiously dating again. I still experienced occasional nightmares about the fall, waking with phantom pain in my shoulder. Yet with each passing month, the power of those traumatic memories diminished. What grew stronger was our renewed appreciation for the sibling bond we had nearly lost, a connection that, having been tested so severely, now stood more resilient than ever. "You know what I've realized?" Garrett said as we walked through Lincoln Park one afternoon, intentionally reclaiming the space that had been the site of so much pain. "Real love, whether family, friendship, or romantic, never tries to isolate you from other people who care about you. Real love makes room for all the important connections in your life." Standing in the autumn sunshine, watching leaves drift onto the pond where everything had changed, I recognized the profound truth in his words. Our journey had been brutal, but we had emerged with clarity that would guide us forward. The experience had taught us both to trust our instincts, to value honesty even when painful, and to recognize that sometimes fighting for the truth is an act of love, even when it seems hopeless. Most importantly, we learned that healing doesn't mean erasing the past, but rather building something stronger from its lessons. Have you ever had to stand up for someone you love, even when they couldn't see they needed help? Or have you ever had to forgive someone who didn't believe you when it mattered most? These situations test our deepest bonds and reveal our true character. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, sometimes the people we love most are the hardest to reach when they're under someone else's influence, but that doesn't mean we should stop trying. Hit like if you believe in the power of sibling bonds, subscribe for more real-life stories, and comment below with your thoughts on recognizing manipulation tactics in relationships. Thank you for walking through this difficult journey with me today.